You know, some people say a woman's wedding day is the happiest of her life. And it should have been. Oh, my dears, how it should have been. But sometimes life has other plans, and what should have been a fairy tale can turn into a nightmare in minutes. Hello, my loves. This is Grandma Joanne, 60 years young, speaking to you from my little corner of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's a big town now, but still holds pieces of my story scattered throughout its streets. Today, I'm going to share something I've kept in my heart for over 5 decades. A story that changed the course of my life in ways you couldn't imagine. Before I continue, the team at this channel is running a $500 giveaway for our subscribers. To participate, just like this video and comment with something interesting about yourself, where you're watching from, how many grandchildren and children you have, what your hobby is, your age, and much more. I'm excited to read the comments and see who wins this amazing prize. I was born in 1946 in a small town called Millfield in the heart of Pennsylvania, a place where everyone knew everyone, where gossip traveled faster than a tumbleweed rolling downhill, and where a priest's word was worth more than a notarized document. My father, Ernest, owned a small but respected general store. My mother, Connie, sewed for others and made the best pastries in the region. We were a simple family, but happy. I grew up running through dirty yards, climbing apple trees, playing hopscotch with the other girls on the street. Life was hard, but had a sweetness that's hard to find nowadays. Everyone helped each other, doors stayed unlocked, and we slept without fear of anything except the boogeyman our mothers invented to keep us from going out at night. But the story I'm about to tell you isn't about that simple life. It's not about apple trees or homemade pies. No, this story starts when I was just a young woman. I was 22 years old, full of dreams and a heart that still believed in love. Back then, I had my whole future ahead of me, you know. And then there was Henry, my Henry. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a warm, easy smile that made me forget everything else. His hands were strong from working on his family's farm, but gentle when they touched mine. He was the kind of man who made you feel safe, like nothing bad could ever happen as long as he was around. I had no idea how wrong I was. Our wedding day was supposed to be everything a girl dreams of, right? A beautiful church, my father giving me away, and the promise of forever. Henry had promised me forever, and for a while it felt like it was mine. That beautiful man and I, hand in hand, walking into the future together. I thought it was my fairy tale, you know? That's how it felt anyway. But just 2 years later, the man I called my husband showed up at our doorstep with someone else. Her name was Clara, and she was pregnant. And get this, he called her his sister, his pregnant sister. Can you imagine? The love of your life, the man you married, bringing someone like that into your home and calling her family. Sister. What kind of man does that? What kind of husband does that to his wife? I was so stunned, so hurt that I couldn't even speak at first. I stood there, in the doorway of our little house, watching them both like they were strangers. He was standing beside her, like nothing had changed, and I was standing there, holding back tears, trying to hold on to what little dignity I had left. But what hurt the most wasn't just him bringing her into our home, it was the way he looked at her. Like she was the most important thing in the world. Like I didn't even exist anymore. I was just a placeholder. A wife he'd forgotten about. Of course, Clara played along. She sat on the couch, pretending to be the innocent bystander, but I saw through her. She knew exactly what she was doing. And Henry, he seemed so proud of her. Proud of the family they were building together. I thought I'd lost everything that day, but little did I know, the worst was yet to come. Now I'm sure you want to know what happened next. Well, don't go anywhere. This is just the beginning, my dears. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and turn on the notifications so you won't miss a single chapter of my story. And while you're at it, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your stories too. Next time, I'll tell you how that very day, changed everything for me. Stay tuned and don't miss the next chapter. Trust me, you won't want to. You know, when you've lived a good portion of your life, you think you've seen it all. You think you know how people will treat you, how things will turn out. But that day, when Henry brought Clara into our home and called her his sister, I realized I didn't know anything at all. The rug had been yanked out from under me, and I was left flailing, trying to hold on to what little I had left. I kept asking myself how this could happen. How could the man I'd spent years with, the man I had loved, betray me like this? The questions ran through my mind like a broken record, and each time they came, they only left me feeling more lost, more confused. But I wasn't going to let him see me crumble. Oh no, I couldn't do that. Not in front of them, not in front of her. So I kept it together, at least that's what I told myself. I stayed quiet for a while, just letting things unfold around me. Henry kept his distance, and Clara didn't say much. But you know, it's funny. Even though she didn't speak a word, there was something about the way she looked at me. Like she knew she had one, and I was just the unfortunate woman left standing in her shadow. Henry, on the other hand, went about his business like nothing was wrong. He still kissed me goodnight, still acted like we were the same couple we had been. But I wasn't blind. I could see the distance between us growing. Every touch felt like a reminder of how much he had changed. And Clara, well, she didn't need to say a word. Her presence was enough. Days passed, and every day felt like I was suffocating. I would wake up in the morning, make breakfast, do the laundry, and just go through the motions. But every step, every action was like I was walking in someone else's shoes. I wasn't me anymore. I was just someone pretending to be a wife, pretending that everything was fine. And you know what's the hardest part? The hardest part is that Henry didn't even seem to care. He didn't seem to care that I was hurting. He didn't seem to care that our life was unraveling right in front of him. He had his new family now, and I was just a person in the way. But I wasn't going to sit around and let that happen. No, I wasn't about to be forgot. I might have been quiet for a while, but that was just the calm before the storm. And let me tell you something, my dears. If you ever find yourself in a position where someone betrays you like that, you're not alone. We all have our breaking points. And you know, sometimes it's the smallest things that push you over the edge. A glance, a comment, a forgotten anniversary. I didn't know it then, but each moment was slowly pushing me toward the hardest decision I would ever make. So one night, when Henry was late coming home, I decided to go through his things. I wasn't proud of it, but something inside me told me I needed to know the truth. I didn't expect to find what I did. His wallet lying open on the table, a picture of Clara tucked between the folds, and behind it was a small envelope, crumpled and worn, with something written in bold, black ink. For the future we'll build together. That was it. That was the moment everything changed. I knew right then and there that my life would never be the same. The man I loved was gone, and in his place was someone I didn't even recognize, someone who had no problem choosing a stranger over me. I wish I could say that I broke down in that moment, but I didn't. Oh no. I held that envelope in my hand, and I made a vow to myself right then. I wasn't going to let Henry or Clara or anyone take what was mine. I'd built a life with him, a life that now felt like a house of cards ready to fall. But I wasn't going to let it fall without a fight. The next few days were a blur. I didn't speak to Henry. I didn't speak to Clara. I just kept to myself, planning. If this was the life he wanted, then let him have it. But it was going to cost him everything. Because I knew deep down that I wasn't going to let anyone, especially not Clara, walk away with what was rightfully mine. Well, my dears, the days that followed weren't exactly what you'd call peaceful. In fact, it felt like I was living in a storm that wouldn't let up. You know how when the clouds gather and you can feel the thunder rumbling in your chest, but you're just waiting for it to break? That was how it felt, like I was waiting for everything to come crashing down. I didn't say much to Henry. I didn't need to. Every glance between us was like an unspoken conversation, one full of anger, regret, and unhealed wounds. But he didn't seem to care, not the way he used to. It was as if everything he had ever promised me had just disappeared. And Clara, well, she wasn't so easy to ignore. Every time she came around, she had this air of superiority about her, like she had already won. And maybe in her mind she had. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. No, this wasn't going to be the ending to my story. Not when I still had so much fight left in me. I began to take a closer look at everything. Henry's habits, his routines, his little mannerisms. The way he would glance at his phone in the middle of the night when he thought I wasn't watching. The way he would leave the room when Clara called. Oh yes, it all pointed to one thing. He was having an affair, and not just any affair. This was a full-blown relationship. A relationship that had taken root in the home we had built together, in the life we had made. The betrayal stung, but it also gave me clarity. I was no longer the confused, heartbroken woman standing in the doorway, unsure of what to do. No, I was a woman with a plan, and that plan started with Henry. He wasn't going to get away with this, not without consequences. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me, about my dignity, about the life I had sacrificed everything for. And Clara? Well, she was going to learn that I wasn't the kind of woman you could just walk over. No, I wasn't going to just stand there and let her take everything from me. So I did what I do best. I waited, I watched, and I listened. I knew Henry was lying to me. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he moved around the house like a ghost. He wasn't the man I married. But I wasn't going to confront him just yet. No, I had something else in mind. I needed to see just how far he'd go. Days turned into weeks, and each day I grew stronger. I began to take back control of my life, little by little. I started focusing on myself again. I spent time with my friends, went back to my knitting, and even took a long walk around the park where Henry and I used to go. It was my way of reclaiming the woman I had been before him, before all the lies and the heartache. And you know, as I walked through that park, I realized something. For all of Henry's mistakes, for all the pain he caused me, there was one thing I still had. I still had my strength, and no one, not even him, could take that away from me. The real turning point came one night, when Henry came home late again. He stumbled through the door, looking more disheveled than usual, and immediately went for his phone. That was my chance. I waited until he was absorbed in whatever message he was reading, and then I made my move. I walked up behind him quietly and put my hand on his shoulder. He froze, his entire body going rigid. "I know," I said, my voice low but steady. "I know about you and Clara. I know everything." He turned to face me, his eyes wide with surprise, but I could see the guilt written all over his face. The lies were no longer a shield. He had nowhere to hide. Joanne, he stammered, but I wasn't interested in his excuses anymore. "No more lies, Henry. You've had your chance. Now you'll see what happens when you betray someone who loved you." He didn't say another word. The silence in the room was deafening. But let me tell you something, my dears. That silence wasn't the end. No, it was just the beginning of something much bigger, something that was going to change everything. I was done being the woman who sat quietly in the background, watching my life fall apart. I was done being the victim. And let me tell you, my loves, if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone walk all over you, no matter how much they've hurt you. Because in the end, the only person who can save you is you. I don't want to spoil too much for you, but trust me, what happens next is going to shake you. I have a plan and it's going to work, but I need your support. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can follow along. Tell me, where are you watching from? I want to hear your stories too. Well, my dears, you know how sometimes you think you've hit rock bottom, only to discover that there's a whole new level of hurt waiting for you. That was the feeling I had after that confrontation with Henry. I thought I was done crying, done feeling sorry for myself, but life had a funny way of showing me I wasn't quite finished yet. It wasn't that Henry came clean, you know. No, he didn't suddenly apologize and beg for my forgiveness. He didn't do any of those things I'd hoped for deep down. What he did was worse. He shrugged it off. It was like I wasn't even a part of the equation anymore, like my feelings didn't matter. He just didn't care. And that's when I realized, truly realized, just how far gone he was. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It wasn't even a relationship. It was an arrangement, a sick, twisted arrangement where I was simply expected to sit quietly while he played his games. And Clara, well, she wasn't going anywhere. She was a permanent fixture in his life now, no longer the sister he pretended she was. I could see it in his eyes. She had him wrapped around her little finger. So what was I supposed to do with that? Sit back and let them destroy everything I'd worked for. Let them take everything that was mine. Let them steal my dignity and the years I spent loving him. No, that wasn't going to happen. It wasn't just about revenge, not in the way you might think. It was about something deeper. It was about reclaiming my life, my sense of self, and my happiness. Because let me tell you something, no one is going to take that from me. Not Henry, not Clara, and not anyone else. I'm not that woman. I started to make my plans. Slowly, carefully. The first step was simple. I needed to get my finances in order. Henry had always handled the bills, the bank accounts, everything. But now I needed to know exactly where I stood. I wasn't going to be left in the dark anymore. I made an appointment with a lawyer, a lovely woman named Susan, who had a way of making you feel like you could conquer the world just by sitting in her office. She was kind, but sharp as a tack, and that's exactly what I needed. When I sat down in her office, I told her everything. About Henry, about Clara, about the years of pain and the betrayal that still stung. I even told her how I felt like I was suffocating in my own home, like I didn't even know who I was anymore. Susan listened without interrupting, nodding every now and then, as though she could sense the weight of everything I was saying. "You've been through a lot, Joanne," she said, her voice calm, but there was a fire behind her words. "But you're not alone in this. We'll make sure that Henry doesn't walk away without facing the consequences of what he's done to you." Her words gave me something I hadn't had in a long time. Hope. Hope that I wasn't just going to fade into the background of my own life. Hope that there was a way out of this mess, a way to rebuild my future. But of course, nothing worth having ever comes easily. As I left Susan's office, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get worse before they got better. Henry wasn't going to take kindly to any of this. He'd been living his little double life for too long, and I could only imagine how he'd react when he realized I wasn't going to just sit back and let him tear our life apart. It wasn't long before he found out. The first sign came when he tried to swipe his credit card at the grocery store, only for it to be declined. That's when I knew. I had taken the first step. I had locked down all our accounts and put everything in my name. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Henry came home that night furious. He stormed into the house, demanding to know what I had done to his finances. But I wasn't scared anymore. No, I was done being afraid. I stood tall and faced him, my voice steady. "I'm not your fool anymore, Henry," I told him, my heart pounding in my chest. "You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine." His face went pale, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something. Guilt, regret, or maybe it was just fear, but it didn't matter. I had already made my decision. "You can't do this," he snapped, his voice breaking. "I'll take everything from you, you'll have nothing." But I wasn't intimidated. I had nothing to lose, and that was the most powerful thing I had. So I stood my ground, watching as his anger burned itself out. In the end, he left the room, slamming the door behind him. But I didn't feel the way I thought I would. I didn't feel scared or defeated. I felt free. The next few weeks were a blur. Henry tried to reach out, tried to apologize, but I ignored him. I was too busy with my own life, rebuilding the pieces he'd scattered to the wind. I started attending support groups, meeting women who had been through similar struggles. They told me their stories, and I told them mine, and with each word I felt stronger. But the hardest part, the part that still kept me awake at night, was Clara. I knew she wasn't going to let me go that easily. She wasn't just going to give up the life she'd stolen, and I could see it in her eyes every time we crossed paths. She was determined to keep Henry, no matter what. But I wasn't going to make this easy for her. Oh no. I had a plan, and it was going to work. I wasn't just going to walk away with my head down. No, I was going to win. And I was going to do it with grace, with strength, and with the dignity I had earned through all those years of pain. And the best part is that Henry was going to see me win. He was going to see that I didn't need him to be happy. I had everything I needed right here inside me. And that, my dears, was something I could never give up. Well, my dears, if you've made it this far, you're probably wondering just how far I'd go to make Henry and Clara feel the weight of their betrayal. Let me tell you something. This wasn't about revenge in the petty way you might think. No, this was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and proving to myself that I was more than the woman they thought they could walk all over. You see, the hardest part wasn't just Henry's affair or Clara's smug attitude. The hardest part was realizing that for all these years, I had allowed myself to become invisible. I had allowed my own happiness to take a backseat to everyone else's needs, but not anymore. I wasn't going to be the forgotten woman in her own story. No, this was my time. The first step in my plan was something small, but it felt like a victory every time I did it. I started doing things just for myself, things I'd put off for years. I took up gardening again, something I hadn't done since Henry and I first moved into this house. There was something about getting my hands in the dirt, watching life grow, that made me feel like I was taking control of something again. It was simple, but it was mine. I also started picking up the phone more, reaching out to old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Some of them had drifted away when I'd married Henry. I suppose I'd let the years go by without realizing how much I needed them. But now, I was making the effort. I reconnected with old friends, laughed about things we'd done in our youth, and I even started volunteering at the local community center. You know, the kind of things you don't have time for when you're too busy being a wife and mother. But I made the time now. Henry noticed, of course. It wasn't that he was a fool. He could see the changes in me, see that I wasn't the same woman who would sit quietly at home waiting for him to come back. He'd come home, and I would be sitting in the living room, reading a book or preparing a meal that wasn't his favorite but was just what I wanted to eat. He'd try to make small talk, but it wasn't the same. The bond we had, if it was ever really there, was gone. And though he tried to pick at the loose threads, they weren't unraveling the way he expected. But what really got under his skin was when I told him I was taking a trip. I'd never done something like that before, not without him. I'd always waited for his approval, always worried about what he would think, but not anymore. I was going to visit my sister in Florida, something I'd been planning for months. I'd never been to the beach before, at least not since I was a teenager. And I was going, no matter what he said. The night before I left, Henry tried to make nice. He offered to drive me to the airport. He even bought me a little gift, a necklace that at one point would have made me melt. But that night, I didn't melt. I was as cold as the glass of wine I was sipping. "You're still my wife, Joanne," he said, his voice soft, like he was trying to reach something in me that had gone silent. "I don't want to lose you." And for a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. But the truth, my dears, is that it didn't matter anymore. Not the gifts, not the sweet words, not even the promises he made in the middle of the night. What mattered was the woman I was becoming. What mattered was the woman I was learning to love, the woman who had learned to stand up for herself, to say no, and to take back what was hers. The next morning I left. I didn't look back, and as I boarded that plane, something inside me clicked. For the first time in years, I felt free. I was going to see my sister, but more than that, I was going to rediscover myself. I wasn't just someone's wife anymore. I wasn't just a mother. I was Joanne, and that was enough. Florida was everything I needed. The sand beneath my feet, the ocean breeze, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore gave me peace in a way I hadn't felt in decades. I spent days lounging on the beach, enjoying the warmth of the sun, and nights laughing with my sister over glasses of wine. It felt like I was reclaiming pieces of myself I didn't even know were missing. And it was during that trip that I had my first real conversation with Clara. Don't ask me why she called. Maybe she thought I was alone, weak, maybe she thought I'd break. But she called, and she told me things. Some of them were lies, but some of them, well, they were the truth. She told me how she thought she could have Henry all to herself, how she never understood why he kept coming back to me, even when I wasn't the woman he once loved. And in that moment, something inside me softened. Not because I felt sorry for Clara, no, but because I understood something. She wasn't my enemy. Henry was. Clara was just a symptom of the deeper problem. And the truth was, I didn't need to fight her. I needed to fight him, to fight for myself. When I returned from my trip, Henry was waiting for me at the airport. He didn't have to say a word. I could see it in his eyes, the guilt, the confusion, the realization that things were never going to go back to the way they were. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. I wasn't the woman who had once begged him for his love. I was the woman who had learned that I could survive without him. And that, my dears, was my greatest victory. The next few weeks were tense, but I didn't fold. I didn't break. I stood strong, and slowly I started making plans. Plans that didn't involve Henry. I was taking back my life piece by piece. But the story isn't over yet. No, not by a long shot. Stay tuned, my dears. The next chapter holds surprises that will change everything. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Where are you watching from? I want to hear your stories too. Well, my dears, I knew from the moment I returned from Florida that things were going to take a turn. The air in the house felt different, thick with unsaid words, with tension. I could feel Henry watching me, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to cave into the weight of the years we'd spent together. But I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. The thing about breaking free is that it's never easy. You think it will be. Oh, how you think it will be. But when the dust settles, you're left with the truth. And the truth, my dears, is that when you start standing up for yourself, you start seeing the people around you for who they really are. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And let me tell you, I was starting to see things in Henry I had never noticed before. Or maybe I had noticed them, but I had been too afraid to admit them to myself. Too afraid to admit that the man I had once loved was no longer the man I had married. For weeks after my return, Henry tried to play the part of the remorseful husband. He brought me flowers, he made me dinner, he even apologized, though it felt empty. The apology didn't feel like the kind of apology someone gives when they truly understand their mistakes. No, it felt like the kind of apology someone gives when they realize they've lost control. And he had, you see. He had lost control, and in the process, he had lost me. But there was something else, something I hadn't been expecting. As the days passed, I started to notice small things that made me uneasy. The way Henry would glance at his phone when I walked into the room, or the fact that he was always working late, when I knew for a fact he wasn't at the office. He still hadn't told me the full truth about his relationship with Clara, and I knew he never would. Not unless I forced him to. One night after dinner, I decided it was time to stop pretending. I had spent too long wondering if he would ever come back to me, if he would ever realize what he had lost. But now, I wasn't waiting for him anymore. I was taking charge of my own story. "You know, Henry," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I've been thinking a lot about this about us, and I think I've made up my mind." He froze. I saw the look in his eyes, a mix of fear and defiance. He knew what was coming. "I'm done," I said, and it felt like the weight of the world had lifted off my shoulders. "I'm done pretending, done trying to fix something that's beyond saving." He looked at me, disbelief clouding his face. "Joanne, no, you can't." "No, Henry," I interrupted, my voice steady. "You can't have it both ways. You can't keep lying to me, to yourself. And you can't keep dragging me along while you live your double life. I'm not your second choice anymore. I deserve more than that. I deserve honesty. I deserve respect." His jaw clenched, his eyes flickering with a mix of anger and regret, but I didn't back down. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said, his voice low. I don't know what else to do." I shook my head. "There's nothing left for you to do, Henry. You've made your choices, and now I'm making mine." That night, I went to bed with the strangest sense of peace. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life again. I wasn't just Henry's wife anymore. I wasn't just the woman who had been hurt and betrayed. I was Joanne, just Joanne, and I was finally beginning to remember who she was. But just when I thought I was done with Henry, just when I thought I could walk away without looking back, he did something that changed everything. Something I didn't see coming. The next morning, he was gone. He didn't just leave the house for work like he had so many times before. No, he was gone. He had packed his things and left me a note that read, "I'm sorry for everything. I know I've failed you, but I've made my decision. I'm with Clara now. I want a fresh start. Goodbye, Joanne." It was short, it was cold, and it was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. I don't know why it hit me the way it did. Maybe I'd hoped deep down that he would fight for me, but the truth is that hope had been foolish. Henry was gone and Clara had won. She had what she wanted. She had taken him from me. But the thing is, I realized that it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me. It was about reclaiming the life I had lost, the strength I had buried under years of pain and neglect. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. Instead, I took a deep breath, folded the note, and put it in a drawer. Because I wasn't going to waste another minute on him. I wasn't going to let him define me. It was time for me to move on, for good. It was time for me to take my life back. And you know, my dears, sometimes the hardest thing in life is letting go of the people who never truly appreciated you. But once you do, something amazing happens. You begin to see yourself for who you truly are, and that's when the real change begins. So I made a promise to myself that day. I promised that I would never be the woman who let someone else control her happiness again, and I meant it. But as it turned out, letting go wasn't as easy as I thought. Henry's departure had just opened the door for something bigger, something I didn't expect. Well, my dears, it's strange how life works. One moment, you think you've hit rock bottom, and the next, you're being pulled into a storm that makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. After Henry left, I thought things would settle down. I thought I'd be able to breathe again, to find peace. But I was wrong, so terribly wrong. You see, the thing about loss is that it doesn't just leave an empty space. It shakes the foundation of everything you've ever believed in. It makes you question your worth, your place in the world. And when Henry walked out, taking everything with him, I found myself staring into the abyss of my own self-doubt. But it wasn't just about him. It wasn't just about Clara. No, my dears, it was about me. It was about who I had become in the shadows of that marriage, in the years of sacrifice and silence. I had spent so much of my life thinking that I was just a wife, just a mother, just the person who kept everything together. But who was I really? What had I become? It took time, but I started to piece myself back together. Slowly, and with a strength I didn't even know I had. I spent the next few weeks reclaiming my space, my time, my peace. I rearranged the house, painted the walls a bright shade of yellow, something that reminded me of the sun, of hope. I started taking long walks around the neighborhood, something I hadn't done in years. The fresh air, the sound of children playing in the streets, it reminded me that life, despite the heartbreak, still had beauty in it. But even though I was trying to move on, Henry's presence still lingered. He wasn't physically there, no. But his absence was a weight I carried every day. And Clara still haunted me. I had no illusions about her. She wasn't going anywhere. She was Henry's new life, and she was going to make sure I knew it. And that's when I started noticing something strange. I kept seeing Henry's truck parked outside our house, but not in the usual spots. It was parked further down the street, almost like he was hiding. I didn't think much of it at first, but something in me told me that wasn't right. That wasn't just him being discreet. It was him being ashamed. He didn't want to be seen. Not with me, not with Clara. He was hiding. One evening, after another long day of pretending I was fine, I decided to confront him. I had enough. I wasn't going to let him creep in and out of my life, playing games with my heart. If he wanted to be with Clara, fine. But he wasn't going to make me feel invisible. I walked outside, heart pounding, and there he was sitting in his truck, staring out the window. He didn't even see me at first. And when he did, his face dropped. He wasn't expecting me, but I wasn't backing down. "Henry," I called, my voice steady, but laced with something I hadn't felt in a long time, power. He shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair. "Joanne, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said, crossing my arms. "Why are you hiding, Henry? What are you ashamed of?" He looked away, guilt and frustration flashing across his face. But I wasn't letting him off the hook this time. "I'm not hiding," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. I didn't know what to say, how to make this right." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You think you can make it right? After everything you've done? No, Henry, there's no fixing this, but I'm done pretending. I'm done waiting for you to choose me. I'm done being the woman who's always second place." For the first time, he seemed to realize just how much he had lost. He didn't try to interrupt, didn't try to make excuses. He just sat there, taking it all in. But even though it felt like a victory to finally speak my truth, it wasn't a celebration. It was more of a release of all the anger, all the sadness, all the years of living in the shadow of someone else's life. But just as I was about to walk away, he said something that stopped me dead in my tracks. "I'm sorry," he whispered, almost too quietly for me to hear. "I never meant for things to turn out this way. You were always the best thing in my life, Joanne, and I'll never be able to fix that." I didn't turn around. I couldn't. His words were empty now, just another round of words I'd heard too many times before. The truth was, Henry had left me a long time ago, and whatever apology he was offering now was too little, too late. I walked back into the house, feeling like I had finally let go. And let me tell you, my dears, it wasn't about forgiving him. It wasn't about fixing anything. It was about me, about reclaiming what was mine, my peace, my strength, and my future. But just as I thought I was finally free, Clara made her move. I should have seen it coming. I should have known that she wouldn't just sit back and let Henry go without a fight. And she didn't. The next day, she showed up at my door. Her smile was as fake as her intentions, and I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't there to apologize. She wasn't there to make peace. She was there to finish what she had started, to take everything that was mine. And that, my dears, is when I realized that I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Stay tuned, my loves. The storm is far from over. And believe me, Clara is going to learn just how strong I really am. Well, my loves, just when I thought I was starting to get my life back together, Clara walked through that door, and I knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same. I had been trying to rebuild piece by piece, but there she was, standing in front of me with that same smug look on her face. The kind of look that said, "I've already won, and now I'm just here to rub it in." She wasn't there to apologize. Oh no, she wasn't even there to talk about Henry. No, she came to make sure I knew my place. That's the thing with people like Clara. They think they can just take and take and take without any consequences. But this time, I wasn't going to let her. "Joanne," she started, her voice sweet as sugar, but you could hear the venom lurking underneath. "I think we need to have a conversation." I looked at her for a long moment before speaking, my voice cool but firm. "About what? What exactly do we need to talk about, Clara?" Her lips curled into a smile, but it was the kind of smile that made my skin crawl. "Well, I just wanted to make sure you understand your place in all of this. Henry and we've moved on, and I don't think you need to keep holding on to something that's long gone." I couldn't believe my ears. This woman, who had come into my life, destroyed my marriage, and then waltzed in like she owned the place, was telling me to let go, telling me to accept her as if she had any right to dictate my life. But I wasn't angry. No, my dears, I wasn't angry anymore. What I was, though, was done. I had been done the moment I stopped crying over Henry's betrayal, the moment I started reclaiming my life. "I understand my place, Clara," I said calmly, the words feeling almost foreign coming out of my mouth. "But you clearly don't understand yours. You see, this house, this life, this legacy, we were together in that, not you. You don't get to come in here, tear things apart, and expect me to just step aside. It's not happening." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't say anything at first. She was trying to figure me out, trying to find a crack in my armor. But she wouldn't, not this time. "You think this is still your life, don't you?" she sneered. "You think you can just keep holding on to Henry like you have any say in it. But it's over, Joanne. He's moved on. You need to let him go, and you need to let me have him." I stood tall. "I already let him go, Clara. The difference is I'm not the one holding on to anything. You're the one who's grasping for something that was never yours to take. Henry's choices, his decisions are his alone. But this house, this family, this life we built, that was mine, and you can't take that from me." The silence hung between us like a heavy cloud. Clara stood there, her expression shifting from anger to disbelief. She didn't know what to say because for the first time, I wasn't the woman she thought she could push around. And that, my dears, was the turning point. I didn't need to fight with her. I didn't need to prove anything. All I had to do was be the woman I had become. And that woman was stronger than anything Clara could throw at me. She turned on her heel, her high heels clicking sharply against the floor, and for a moment, I thought she might say something else, but she didn't. She walked out, leaving me standing there, alone but not really alone. Because in that moment, I realized something. I had won. Without lifting a finger, without doing a thing, I had taken back my power. But there was still more to do. Henry wasn't going to just disappear. He still had a hold on my life, whether I liked it or not. He still had his part to play in this drama, and I wasn't done with him yet, not by a long shot. I spent the next few days gathering the strength I needed. I wasn't going to just sit back and let Henry run off into the sunset with Clara while I sat in the shadows. I had plans, my dears, big ones. Plans that would show him exactly what he had lost. And more importantly, plans that would show me what I was capable of. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. No, not at all. There were still secrets to uncover, still lies to expose, and still decisions to make. And I knew that nothing in this world was ever going to be the same again. But this time I was the one in control. Not Henry, not Clara, me. Well, my dears, let me tell you, when you've been through as much as I have, you start to realize something. Life is all about timing. And sometimes it feels like everything you've been through, every tear you've shed, every battle you've fought leads you to this one defining moment. That's exactly how I felt when the next part of my journey began. You know, I always thought that once I kicked Henry out, once I finally stood up for myself, things would get easier. But the truth is, nothing had prepared me for what happened next. It all started when I received a letter, one of those fancy, official-looking envelopes that you know are either good news or bad news. But this wasn't just a letter. It was a legal letter from Henry's lawyer. At first, I didn't want to open it. I knew deep down what it was about. This wasn't going to be some "I'm sorry" letter, no. It was going to be about the divorce, about splitting everything down the middle, about property and money and assets. Henry had been careful, calculating, and now he was playing the legal game. I could almost hear him saying it. "You're going to get what you deserve, Joanne. What we agreed on, nothing more, nothing less." But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't the woman who would sit quietly, letting everything slip away from me. No, I wasn't going to let him have the last word. Not this time. I sat down with the letter in my hands, took a deep breath, and opened it. And the words on the page, well, they hit me like a ton of bricks. Henry wanted to keep the house, our house, the house we had built together, the house I had poured my heart into for so many years, and he wanted it all. Not just the house, but the retirement funds, the savings we had both worked for. But here's the kicker, he wanted full custody of our assets, everything. He knew I didn't have the energy to fight him legally. He thought I was tired, that I would give in and let him take everything. And for a moment, I wondered if he was right. Maybe it would be easier to just sign the papers, to walk away and leave him with it all. Maybe I was too old to be fighting this battle. Maybe I'd never be able to win. But as I sat there, holding that letter, something inside me shifted. I was done being the woman who always settled, done being the one who was just okay with what was handed to her. I wasn't just going to give up, no. The thing Henry didn't realize was that he hadn't taken everything from me. He hadn't taken my spirit, my will, or my ability to rise from the ashes. He hadn't taken my power. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but it was going to be worth it. The first thing I did was call my lawyer, Susan. I told her everything, the letter, Henry's demands, his arrogance. I was honest with her. I told her I was scared, but also determined. This wasn't just about the house or the money. This was about my dignity. This was about taking back my life. She was quiet for a long moment on the phone, but then I heard it, the edge in her voice. "Joanne, you're not alone in this. I'll make sure Henry doesn't get away with this. We'll fight for what's yours, and we'll make sure he understands that you're not backing down." And that was it. That was the moment I realized I had a team behind me. A team of people who believed in me, who understood that this wasn't just about money. It was about showing Henry that he couldn't just walk all over me anymore. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. There were meetings, papers to sign, documents to review. I couldn't sleep some nights, my mind racing with everything I had to do. But the more I fought, the more I stood my ground, the stronger I became. Henry tried everything to break me. He'd show up at the house, trying to get me to talk, trying to guilt me into giving him what he wanted. But I didn't back down. I stood firm. I didn't need his apologies. I didn't need him to understand. All I needed was to know that I had done everything I could to protect myself, my future, and my dignity. But the real turning point came when Clara, yes, that woman, tried to get involved. She showed up at my door one afternoon, her eyes wide with that same sense of entitlement she'd always had. "Joanne," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness, "I think it's time you moved on. You're not going to get anything from Henry, you know. He's made his decision. He's with me now." I couldn't help but laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was so pathetic. Clara, the woman who thought she could just step into my life, was trying to guilt me out of what was rightfully mine. "I've moved on, Clara," I said, my voice calm but firm. "And I don't need your permission. I'm not giving up what's mine just because you think you've won. I'm stronger than you think." Her smile faltered for just a second, and I could see the doubt creeping in. She wasn't used to people standing up to her. She wasn't used to anyone telling her no. And that, my dears, was the most satisfying part. I wasn't going to let her or Henry steal my future. They thought they had won, but they hadn't even begun to understand what I was capable of. So I signed the papers. I fought for everything that was mine. And while I didn't get everything back, I got something far more valuable. I got my peace. I got my future. I got my freedom. And that, my loves, is how I won. Not because I fought dirty. Not because I was vengeful. I won because I stood up for myself. And in the end, that's all that matters. Well, my loves, here we are. The final chapter. The moment everything I've been through leads to. It's funny, you know, how life has a way of testing you. How it can throw everything it has at you just to see if you'll break. And there were days when I thought I couldn't go on. Days when I felt like I was losing everything. But here I am, stronger than I ever thought I could be. When I think back on everything that happened, Henry's betrayal, Clara's smugness, the legal battles, and the pain I fought through every single day, I can see now that it wasn't just about them. It was about me. It was about discovering who I truly was when everything else had been stripped away. But let me tell you something, my dears. There is power in standing your ground. There is power in not letting anyone tell you who you are or who you should be. And the greatest power, it comes from the moment when you finally realize that the life you've been fighting for has always been inside you. You don't need anyone else to give it to you. You just have to take it. The last few months had been a whirlwind. After everything, Henry leaving, the fights, the legal mess, I had finally started to feel like I could breathe again. My lawyer, Susan, had been incredible. She fought hard for me, and together we made sure that I got what was rightfully mine. The house, the money, the security, everything I had worked for, everything Henry had tried to take from me, I was getting it back. But it wasn't just about the material things. It was about me, about reclaiming my own worth. I didn't need Henry to validate me anymore. I didn't need his love. I had found something better. I had found my own strength. As the dust settled, I started making plans, big plans. For the first time in years, I was thinking about the future, my future. I started looking into travel, something I'd always wanted to do but had never made time for. I even started taking classes again, something I hadn't done in decades. I was learning, growing, and rediscovering parts of myself that had been lost for far too long. But just as I was starting to feel like I was on the right path, Henry showed up again. I'll admit my heart skipped a beat when I saw him standing there, outside my door. He looked different, older, worn. His suit was rumpled, his eyes tired. He didn't look like the man who had walked out on me so many months ago. He looked like someone who had lost everything. "I've come to make things right," he said, his voice quieter than I expected. "I know I've hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know I'm sorry for everything." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in a long time. I could see the regret in his eyes, but I also saw something else. I saw that he was lost, that he was trying to find a way back to something that didn't exist anymore. "I'm not the woman you left behind, Henry," I said, my voice steady but full of finality. "And I'm not going to pretend like everything can just go back to the way it was. I don't need your apology. What I needed was you then. But you weren't there." He nodded, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of his actions had finally caught up to him. "I know," he whispered. "I lost you. I lost everything. And now I'm just trying to make sense of it all." I didn't feel sorry for him, not anymore. Maybe I had once, maybe I'd hoped for a different outcome, but not anymore. I had learned the hard way that the person I had to save was me, and I had done it. I had rebuilt my life piece by piece. "I've moved on, Henry," I said quietly, "and I'm not looking back, not for you, not for anyone." There was a long silence between us, and in that silence I realized something. I had finally closed that chapter. I had let go of the anger, the hurt, and the bitterness. I wasn't holding on to it anymore, and for the first time in years I felt completely free. Henry nodded again, slowly, his eyes full of understanding. "I hope you find happiness, Joanne," he said. "I really do." "I already have," I replied, my voice strong and clear. "And it's something you can't take from me." He didn't argue. He didn't try to make me feel guilty. He just turned and walked away, and I watched him go without feeling anything. No sorrow, no longing, just peace. And just like that, I was finally free. As the weeks went by, I watched my life unfold in ways I never imagined. I went on that trip I'd been dreaming about. I saw places I'd only ever read about. I met new people, made new friends, and found joy in the little things I had once overlooked. But the best part, I learned to love myself again. I learned that I was enough. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I was whole just as I was. And so, my dears, I leave you with this. Life isn't always going to be kind. Sometimes it will knock you down when you least expect it. But it's in those moments, in the deepest valleys, that you find your true strength. And remember, no matter what happens, you are always enough. You are worthy of love, of respect, and of a life filled with joy. Never forget that. Thank you, my dears, for being with me on this journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I want to hear your stories too. And as always, stay tuned for more. There's always another chapter in life, and I'm ready to write it. Are you?